Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna welcome Vinicius here talking today about digital marketing and advertising. Um, Vinicius has over 15 years experience in marketing and advertising as well as media. Spent time at Google and TV Globo as an AE account executive, and also in the past 5 years working as marketing director for Fox's, media manager for Jay Walter, and most recently a digital manager for Carnes O'Neill. And so we're really excited to hear his about his diverse background and Vinicius's sort of best practices and sort of an intro to the industry for those who are on the fence or are already know they're getting into it, but hearing from his perspective. So with that, welcome and really excited to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Let me just turn on my video here. Hello, folks. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. I don't know where everybody is. So let me share my screen. Hold on, there you go. All right. So I want to humbly share a little bit of my experience and what I've learned since I started my career in advertising. Uh, I might be able to offer a few shortcuts. I know that I definitely made more mistakes than I wanted to, and hopefully, I'll be able to help you not do the same. So, my name is Vinicius. You can call me Vini. And in the end of this presentation, or when we share this presentation with you, I'll give you my LinkedIn profile and things like that. So, if you want to reach out and ask any further questions. So, I will start by, let me just skip this. There you go. I will start by getting a little bit, I wouldn't say philosophical, but just talking about both marketing and advertising as big and large trees. And if you think about them as trees, you can imagine that they both have a lot of branches, and it's easy to get lost, and it's hard to figure out which branch you should follow. And to give a simple example, if we're talking about advertising, you can become an awarded creative director, developing campaigns for Nike, or you can become a marketing professional that has a career that is exclusively focused on the pharmacy industry. So it's really broad, and it's hard to find the best fit for you. As I was talking with James before we started. So a lot of people will tell you that you should look for what you love, and because you love what you're doing, you will have a higher chance of success. Well, to a point, I agree with that. But on the other hand, I love basketball, but I definitely shouldn't be doing that as a career. So I do think that we need to focus on what we're good at. And most of the times we like what we're good at. So one thing doesn't mean that it doesn't exclude the other. But the more you love something, the more you're good at something, the higher the chance that you excel at it, the higher the chance that you will be unique, and the higher the reward you're going to get for it. So the more you know yourself, the more you will know what you're good at, the higher the chance you're going to be able to find the right branch to follow in either marketing or advertising. The second advice that I will give is make yourself known. You can be the best football player in the world, but if you live in a tiny village and no one has ever heard of football over there, it's not going to mean much. And throughout my career, I've seen a lot of people that are really competent just follow behind because people that were more expressive or more aggressive would just trample them. And I do think that it's important, again, first of all, to understand what you're good at so that you make your chances improve, but also that you communicate to others the great things that you've been doing. So I wanted to start with this because it's really something that once I understood changed my life, made my career much easier. So having said that, I'll talk a little bit about marketing. So There are a gazillion definitions. So according to Google, over 2 billion definitions of what marketing is. And I'm sure most of you seen enough of them. But this one that I like is from the American Marketing Association. I won't even read the whole thing because I think that we can simplify it to marketing is simply communicating value for customers. So if you're going to be a marketing professional, your job is going to be to convince people that the product or service that you represent is worth something. So it doesn't matter if you are the marketing VP for Porsche or the marketing person for a tiny startup, your main goal will still be to communicate to people that whatever it is that you represent has value. And when we talk about customers, we need to be a bit open-minded. We're not just talking about people that will purchase both your services or your products, but also all the stakeholders. But I will get into that later on. Now, what I was telling before is that even if everyone understands that the definition of marketing is the one that I mentioned in the previous slide, what your life is going to be will depend a lot on the type of products and service that you will promote. As I mentioned, uh, if you are marketing VP for a pharma company, or if you are the marketing VP for Porsche, your lives are going to be uh, pretty different. So I decided to show this example just so that you understand what your day to be is going to be, your day to day is going to be depending on the type of industry that you work at and depending on the size of the company. So in this example, let's say that you are working on a startup, right? You're basically responsible for everything. You will define with the CEO the price you're going to charge for the service or product. You will develop campaigns. Sometimes you will implement them by yourself, optimize by yourself. You will build reports for the CEO. You will select the target audiences. You will do all the A/B testing yourself. So it's more rewarding in a way because you're going to have all the power. However, it's a lot of work and it will demand from you general knowledge that you might not need if you go work on a larger company where things are more clustered and compartmentalized. I just made up a word, but I think you got the idea. If we go to the other side of the example, which is a medium-sized company, uh, you will be much more focused on, let's say, in a specific feature of a product or in one of the products that the company creates or one of the services that they offer. So, for example, at the current place that I'm working at, we have a client that is a telecom company. In their marketing department, they have, let's say, 15 people, and they have one of them that just focus on one of their products and other that focus only on search campaigns and so on and so forth. So the larger the campaign, the more focused you will be in a specific part of the business and also in a specific task. So marketing departments in medium and large companies sometimes have a person that is just responsible for, as I said, search or for report building or for analytics. So if you're just starting in marketing, I think that if you start in a large or big company, you will suffer a little bit in the future because you have a much more narrow vision of what you can do as a marketer. And if you start at a smaller company, you will struggle, but you will have a big picture of everything that you can do, right? Even though your budget is going to be much smaller. So going back to what you would do in a medium to large size company, you will control budgets that will be defined by the VP or by the CMO. You will build reports, manage the agencies and other partners that will create things for you, the, the ads that you're going to promote and you're going to use in your campaigns, the campaigns itself. So you will also approve the campaigns that they will develop. You will send briefings to them, and will definitely build reports, because that's something that a lot of people in medium to large companies spend most of their time doing, because the larger the company, the more people that have no idea of what marketing is will be above you, and it will be your job to prove to them that their money is well spent. So reports, well, they will be needed. So again, just to recap, what I was saying is that based on the size of the company or in the business that you'll be into, your day to day will be really, really different. So I wanted to show a little bit of what that life could be using two examples. So all of you know Red Bull, and it seems exciting to work in their marketing department. And it actually seems to be, because a buddy of mine worked there for a while. They sponsor a lot of athletes, amazing events, and things like that. And let me just give you a little bit of a glimpse of what it seems to be like working in their marketing department. So, as James pointed out, I don't have the audio for these videos here for you guys to hear, but I didn't intend to show the whole thing. What I wanted to hear is the person that worked in the marketing of Red Bull saying how amazing it is to work there, because she used to be a part of all of those events and so on and so forth. So, if you work at a company like that, you will have to be on those events, and you have to make sure that the athletes have everything, that the brand is well positioned. So it's a really different day to day from what you would do if you were part of the John Deere marketing department. And again, you don't even need the sound just to see what one of their videos looks like. So as you can see, just by the look and feel of their videos, it's definitely a B2B approach. And it's not as fun, it's not as entertaining, but they do have a marketing department, and they do have people that work behind this video. So the goal of those two, and when we share this, you'll be able to see the whole thing. And also don't want to bore you to death with those, is just to make you see that even though the marketing concept is the same, and a lot of other things are similar, as I will mention in the next slide. Your life can be very different depending on the side of the company and on the industry that you work at. So the main point I want to get through here is that regardless of the company that you work for, you will need the things that I've listed here. So again, I'm talking to you assuming that you're going to start working in marketing soon, and you haven't got a lot of experience. So of course that this list will grow as you evolve in the organization. But for, let's say, a starting kit, a starting set, that's what I would recommend. So I will go into a little bit of details for each of them. Now, data analysis skills. I'm not saying that you need to know the R software or Python or any of those complex things that you might think about when you were listening to me talking about data. It's pretty much common sense and understanding how to look at numbers and tell a story based on what you see. So a lot of the reports that you will get working in a marketing department are what I call data pukes. So it's basically a lot of numbers, and they do not tell a story, and they do not communicate insights. So if you want to be a valuable marketing professional, I believe that you need to be able to analyze data, and also to ask people that work for you or that work with you to be able to do the same. So I'll give you an example. So when you're looking at campaign reports, you see a lot of numbers such as click-through rate. And there will be sentences saying like, last week, the click-through rate went up from 0.16 to 0.19, which sounds good, but it doesn't really mean a thing. So why did it go up? Was it because we replaced the creatives? Was it because we changed the target audience? Was it because people were just more inclined to click on those specific ads the past week? So that's what I mean by data analysis skills. When I said that reporting will be a big part of your life if you are in a medium or large size company, uh, that's what I'm talking about, reporting, and it needs to go beyond the numbers. So organization. The reason I put this here is because, again, regardless of the size of the company or the industry, working in marketing will mean that you have to manage a lot of budgets, a lot of numbers, and I've seen a lot of people get fired because of mistakes related to lack of organization. I'll give you an example. So you are managing a campaign, and you have a budget of 100,000, and you tell your agency that they have around 100,000 to spend, but then you make a mistake when you're controlling the pacing of the campaign, and you end up spending 120,000. So that's your problem now. And that's one of the reasons why I say that organization is fundamental. But there's more to that. It's not just controlling budgets. Let's say that you have, as I was saying, Red Bull as an example. Let's say that you have a new event. You have a billion things to control, and you need to do them by the set date. And if you're not organized, you won't be able to do it. Or you work for, let's say, Chevrolet or Volkswagen, and you have a campaign that will run in 37 different states, and you need to make sure that it all goes out at the same time, and there's media out of home, and there's a lot of other things that you need to control. So organization is key, so that you will prevent you from going crazy, believe me. So I do recommend you Mary Kondo the hell out of your professional life. uh, those two things are really underestimated, and I find that hardly anyone is a big fan of those softwares. But I learned to love Excel, and I still don't like PowerPoint. But as you can see from this presentation, it is important for your life, not just for your professional life. But you will need to uh, create presentations in a lot of different situations. But the reason I'm saying that those two softwares are going to be important for you as a marketing professional is because you're just going to use them a lot. So if you don't know how to create a pivot table on Excel in Excel, or if you don't know how to, just develop the basic slide that doesn't look hideous in PowerPoint, you're going to struggle a little bit. And I recommend that you just get used to those platforms and those two softwares as soon as possible. And it doesn't have to be PowerPoint. It can be Keynote or any type of software that does the same thing. But I do recommend that you get used to those two. The sooner the better. And again, tying it back to the previous point, like there is no better tool to help you get organized than Excel. All right, so those two, common sense and general knowledge, they're kind of connected, and they are more important than you might think for a person in the marketing and advertising too. But marketing is important because you are the one that will sign the checks, and you're going to be the one that will approve the campaigns. So if something goes wrong, even though the agency created it, you approved it, so you're going to be held responsible. So the way I connect those two things to marketing is that a lot of tone deaf, bad marketing campaigns, and just generally bad ideas are green lighted every day, and not all of them. Sometimes you just cannot predict how people are going to react, but a lot of times you can. So I believe that if you have common sense, there's and confidence to say what you're thinking. There's a good chance that you will not approve something that is obviously going to go poorly. But general knowledge is also important because it will assist your common sense. If you don't know what's going on around you, there's a chance that you might miss why that campaign that's being presented to you is tone deaf, why the post that the social team in your company wants to send out shouldn't be sent out today. So understanding what's going on around you, having a finger in the pulse of culture, I do think that it's really important, and it's your reputation at risk, right? So when you see that a campaign backfired and the company is now facing backlash, you can't believe that the marketing person that was responsible for approving that is going to get a lot of heat. Now, business 101, what I say by that is I don't mean that you need to immediately go into an MBA after you graduate. I just mean that you have to remember that working for a marketing department means that you're working for someone else, and that someone else, let's say the CEO, is focused on what the shareholders care about, which is most of the times profit. So a lot of times I see a disconnect between what the marketing department cares about and what the most important people in the company from a hierarchy standpoint care about. And by that, I mean, as an example, the marketing department of a large company that I used to work for, not the company, I used to provide service to them through an agency. So they were promoting a product. And I remember the first week I pulled a report and I said, look, the cost per acquisition is really high. It's way above what the cost of the product is. So it's not good. And I recommend that you stop advertising in places ABC so we can make that cost per acquisition drop and make the campaign profitable. And they just said, no, I think that it's important for us to be in those, and let's keep things as they are. So there was definitely a disconnect because I bet you that the CEO cared about, profits. So I do think that when I say business 101, I just clearly mean that you need to be able to remember that your campaigns need to bring profit to the company. So it's important that the results are connected to the business goals that you have. And finally, basic understanding of the main marketing tools. So what you see here on the left, it might look like the Richard Tree map, but it's actually over 7,000 companies that offer products and services for marketing professionals, marketing and advertising professionals. So they release one of those every year. And it's mind-blowing, and it's impossible for you to be on top of everything. So there's things here connected to AI, things here connected to, well, I won't even go into each of them, but the point is, again, it's impossible to know them all, but you need to understand at least a lot about the main tools that you're going to use. So the tools that you're going to use are going to vary depending on the nature of the business and the size of the company. So for example, if you work on a B2B business, maybe the CRM tools that you're going to use to reach your client base, they're going to be really important, and you're going to need to know a little more about them. But if you are a direct-to-consumer company and you do all the media buying internally, then it will be important for you to know a little bit about how Google Ads work, how Facebook works, and so on and so forth. So regardless of the tools that you're going to use more often, are. You just need to make sure that you know how to operate them, because it will make a massive difference. Now, those are the things that I recommend that you folks take a look at before you join a marketing position. It might seem a lot, but again, I'm not saying that you have to have a deep knowledge of every single thing that I said here. You don't need to know in details what's going on in Yemen when I say general knowledge, but it's just a little bit of everything will help you a lot, in my opinion. So, a little bit about advertising, which is what I know more. Uh, Let me start with a simple definition. So, under marketing, you have all those P's that you probably heard a ton of times. And advertising is under the P of promotion. And promotion would be, in this sense, what is written down here. But basically, what I mean by that is that if marketing is communicating value, then advertising is the way that you're going to do it to communicate that value and that message to your target audiences. Now, there are several ways that you can do it. Advertising is not, it's not engineering. You don't have just a one right answer for everything, but you do have usually most of the times a more effective answer. So you won't be able to say, look, I did all the math and the quickest way from point A to point B is this, but based on a lot of data, you can come up with a path from A to B that is definitely better than the others. So uh, it's just something that I think it's important to know. Now, under advertising, there are, as I said, thinking of it as a large tree, there are an unbelievable amount of branches as you have with marketing. But the difference is that, as I was saying, in marketing, what your life is going to be will change a lot depending on the size of the company and in the industry. In advertising, it doesn't change that much. If you work for a small agency or if you work for a large agency, if you work for an agency that is specialized in, uh, let's say, digital advertising, or if you work on an agency that is specialized in a sector, in just the pharma sector, as I said before, or in the auto sector, your day to day, the softwares that you use, your responsibilities, they will not change as much as they will change in marketing. So this is how I divided it. There are agencies that have different definitions for each of the departments, but in most of the ones that I came in contact with, you have four main areas. So they are the account management department, creation, media, and strategy. Now, just to touch on a little bit of what is the life of professionals under each of those four big areas. The account manager is the relationship builder. If you are an account manager working in an agency, your job will be to build a bridge between the client's needs and what your company delivers. So you need to make the client happy. You need to make sure that he's getting what he asked for and that the projects are being delivered in time. Uh, the creatives is pretty much what you can think of and what you saw in movies. They're the ones that will take the instructions from the strategy team to about where the brand is going to go and kind of the big idea, and we'll translate that into something really creative. So it's a bit less artistic than you might think. I used to draw when I was younger, and I still do, but I used to do that a lot when I was younger. And my mom said to me, "You should go into advertising." As you know, in her imagination, I was going to use a lot of the artistic talent that I had in advertising, and it just never happens. Because even though there is a chance you're going to build something really creative and artistic, Most of the times, the creative department will work in things that are much smaller, like a banner, like an outdoor. So things that need to be developed quick, and they are filled with restrictions that will not allow you to be as creative as you want. Media, which is where I work with, which is what I work with, basically it's the data-driven department. You will define which partners and channel will be more effective in delivering the message that was created by the creative department. So you will receive, and sometimes here in North America, for example, you don't have a lot of full service agencies, meaning agencies that have all those four departments inside. So, for example, the place that I'm working at now, it's just focused on media. So I get the creatives from other companies. So there's not a lot of connection between those two things. But my job is, as a media professional, to get those creatives and make sure that they're reaching the right audiences, to make sure that the goals that my clients set are being achieved. And the strategy department, they will basically look at the briefing that the client sends, and they will decide which path uh, we're going to take in order to get to what the client needs. So, for example, in JWT, where I worked at back in Brazil, it was a full service agency. So we would have meetings with the four departments. And the first department to talk was always the strategy and planning department. They would get the briefing and they would come up with, as I mentioned before, a big idea. They would say, for example, for a women's retail company that we had as a client, look, that's where this is the type of image that is appealing to their target audience. So we want to make sure that the brand in this new campaign is going to look a little bit more like this, that the tone of the campaign is going to be a little more like that, and so on and so forth. So it was kind of a general guide for everyone. And that's kind of how they work together. I don't want to spend too much time in it, but again, if you want to know more about how each of those departments is and what is the life of a person that works under each of them, you can also reach out to me later. So I want to talk a little bit about digital because regardless of the agency that you work at, the size, the specialization, or the department, uh, digital is going to be a big part of your life. It used to be when I started at TV Globo, which was a TV company, it still is. Uh, Digital was relevant, and now it's the biggest part of the media budget of most clients. So COVID also pushed that 10 years into the future because companies that were not that well versed in digital had to, catch up and catch up quickly. So there are a lot of consequences to that for both people in marketing and people in advertising. And I want to talk a little bit about each of them so that you're aware of what's coming. All right. So the first thing is the increase of digital media investment. So this is just to support the claim that I was making in the previous slide about how digital became relevant. So I use Canadian data here because I currently live in Canada, but you can find the same trend anywhere else in the world. So in Canada, you will see that from last year to 2023, there will be a massive growth in digital media. And I bet that because this was created before COVID, that this is going to be even bigger when we get to 2023. And again, this is just to support what I was saying before. And the implication of this for professionals in marketing and advertising is that digital is a much more granular and complex ecosystem. So if like back then, even let's use the US as an example. you had 4 TV channels, right? And if you were a marketing person or a media person, you only had to deal with those 4 channels on a large campaign, maybe a couple of magazines and so on. When you blow this up into the landscape that we have today, if you include digital, instead of talking to, let's say, 6 companies, you're going to have to talk to 60. So it is a much more complex ecosystem, right? Now, there's also another factor, which is the relationships are much more opaque. And I'll get to that in in a few minutes. But it's just that it's not just complex because of the amount of companies that you're dealing with. Also, the nature of your relationship with them is not the same. With some of them, you're just not going to have face-to-face interactions. You're just going to use their software, and there's a lot of things that are not transparent in the digital landscape. So that's what I mean by opaque. Now, another thing that it's important to say is that uh, remember the Witcher 3 map that I showed up there. That's the amount of companies there are in the MarTech, the marketing technology universe. And from 2014 until last year, it went up from 1,000 companies to over 7,000. So this is another proof of the complexity of the ecosystem that I was talking about. And just so you know, another piece of data, marketers today, they on average use 12 distinct tools. And however, some of them can use up to 30. And that's why I said previously that it's important for you to master at least the most important tools that will be a part of your day-to-day. So I would say choose the top 3, become really good at them, and then start learning a little bit about the other ones as time goes by. And finally, data. Now, the digital world also increasing in importance also means that you're going to need to deal with a lot more data. And companies have been investing aggressively in changing their cultures to be more data driven, and also all the tools that they're buying in order to manage their data uh, are also contributing to that changing culture. Now, what is the consequence of that? Well, it also connects to what I said before about you learning how to deal with data, but also there's a whole other world of how data will affect your day to day as a marketing and advertising professional. That has to do with some, I would say, even ethical questions. There is a new Netflix documentary that I'll mention in a few minutes that I intensively recommend. But you probably heard as a consumer, as a human being, how we're seeing challenges with data being used in not so well positive ways, right? So you have to make sure that not only you know how to use data from a technical standpoint, but you know how to use that data in an ethically positive way. So again, just to wrap up what those trends mean, they mean that you're going to deal with a much more complex landscape, that you need to learn how to operate more softwares, and you need to learn how to extract and use data. But again, what I was saying about how the new digital landscape changed the whole society that we live in, the documentary I was talking about is The Social Dilemma, with an old colleague of mine, Mr. Tristan from Google. I said that like I know him, I barely know him. But still, I do recommend the Social Dilemma, and it will explain, if you don't already know, the impact of this shift into our lives. Now, finally, so how do you start? I know that I said a lot, and it seems a bit overwhelming. This list here is too extensive. if you want to start working in advertising. But you come in contact with all those words that are written here. Again, regardless of the department that you're going to work with, regardless of the size of the agency that you're going to work in, you are going to listen about those things eventually. Because if you are in the creation department, you will be asked to develop Facebook ads or to come up with search ads. So you will need to know a little bit about all those things. And why did I divide the next steps into those three pillars? Because if you know a little bit about social, a little bit about search, and a little bit about what the, in the advertising world we call programmatic, if you know a little bit about those three pillars, you're going to cover, I would say, more than 95% of what you see in media from an advertising perspective. So I won't go into all of them. But again, if you're interested in moving into advertising and you want to know about those softwares that I mentioned before that I think you should know more about, or you want to be in media and so on and so forth, I can give you humbly some more guidance into where to start and how to start. But I would keep in mind that those three areas are the ones that are going to be more frequent in your life, regardless of the area under an ad agency that you're going to be working for. So finally, I know that I focus in digital here, but the offline landscape when it comes to advertising, it's still pretty relevant. And it's still going to be relevant for a while. So there are just a few recommendations about the three largest pillars for offline. And for TV, I would just recommend going beyond the basic GRPs. Uh, TV used to be a pretty straightforward way to buy media. You would just say, this is how much money I have. And the TV rep would say, this is how many people are going to reach. Thank you. Bye. Now the world has changed and we have connected TVs and there's much more granularity. So sometimes when you're going to buy an ad on a TV, it's going to run in a lot of different places. So I recommend understanding a little more about how your ad on TV will actually be seen through different places and screens. And in out of home, we now have a ton of digital out of home. That means that out of home campaigns can be way more integrated with everything else that you're doing. So if you're doing a campaign on Facebook, you can connect that with the billboard, the electronic billboard that you have on LA and so on and so forth. So I do think that you need to keep an eye out for out of home and for how it's developing towards this connectivity. And finally, print. So print is the area that got hit the most in this shift towards digital. What I would recommend is just focusing on the biggest players because there are still a few out there that remain strong and just trying to figure out which ones are still relevant for your business or for the business of your clients and creating partnerships with them because there's still a lot of great companies that create great content and it's important to keep a good relationship. They can be really helpful in special projects. So I think I've said too much. I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of data, but that's pretty much all I had to say. Thank you for listening. And I know I've been kind of all over the place, but it's just a lot of ground to cover. As I said, we're talking about two massive trees. So I guess that for some final words, I would say, just going back to the beginning, as you can see, there's a lot of paths you can take. There's a lot of options out there for both marketing and advertising. And the more you know yourself, what you're good at, or at least what you're definitely not good at, the easier it's going to be for you to understand the size of company will better fit you, or the type of company, the industry of company, or the area inside advertising, and so on and so forth. And also, once you find the right path and you start doing good work, make sure that the most amount of people possible know about it. It's challenging. There's a lot of competition, and to get yourself to become relevant is not easy. So that's it.
Well, Vinny, thank you so much. This was incredibly I did not think it was possible to sort of cover both advertising marketing with this
That's
time
right.
constraint, and I would say you did it. So I think this was a really, really solid overview, and I'm definitely going to be reviewing the way you broke it down, and I hope the students also found those. I really enjoyed those slides, sort of saying these are the sort of the key skills to have. I definitely know I need to work on my Excel skills, so that was a fantastic reminder. Um, but thank you, and I'd like to
You're
sort of head
welcome.
over to the Dory. We have a few minutes for questions, and
Sure.
I'm just gonna read through the ones that have been submitted, the ones that have been upvoted first. So I have a question here, which is, what are your thoughts about working in media at a full service agency versus media focused agency? Do you personally prefer one over the other?
Oh, that's interesting. Look, back in Brazil when I worked at JWT, I loved that I was able to just sit down with the creative people and debate what we were gonna do, because the creative department doesn't really know media, so they don't understand how a banner has to be created to be more compelling. They don't have that data most of the times, right? Sometimes they do, but most of the times they don't. So it's really nice for you to be able to sit down with them and just brainstorm. Like, look, mate, there's this new function. There's like Facebook release, Instagram release, Reels, right? The TikTok copycat. Uh, how can we create something for this new campaign to run on Reels? So, is it impossible to have the same kind of relationship when you're working on a media focused agency? It's not impossible. You know, once the client tells you what the creative agency is going to be, you can reach out to them and have these conversations. What I recommend is, regardless of being in a media focused or in a full service agency, I do think that you need to be really integrated with everyone involved, because it's going to be for your benefit, not just for them. It's going to be, well, the worst thing that happens is when you set up an amazing media plan and you get really bad creatives, because then the campaign fails and you get blamed, right? Because people are just not clicking in the ads, but it's not the audience that you've selected. It's not the vendor that you chose. It's just that the creatives are not compelling enough. So the more integration you're able to develop, to build, the better it is for you. And having said that, to answer to your question, I think that uh, I like to be in a media focused agency, but I think that if you're going to start now, there's a lot of benefit of starting on a full service agency, just so you can understand what each of the departments do and how they connect to each other.
Awesome. Yeah, I think in my small experience that I've had, I definitely found it useful to sort of
Yeah.
work somewhere bigger and get like the lay of the land and sort of see how everything intertwines. It's overwhelming, but it's
Yeah.
definitely very, very helpful. Um, Second question here, which is, was there a specific experience or class project that you had that made you want to get into marketing and advertising?
Feels ages. I don't really think so. Again, and I started by saying that I made a lot of mistakes and that I'll try to get to not repeat them. And one of them was not knowing enough about what I was getting into. So back when I started, it was harder to get access to information, but that's not an excuse. I should have done my research, and I didn't. And I had no idea what the day-to-day of an ad agency was going to be like, or the day-to-day of a marketing department was going to be like. And maybe today, if I had the chance, I would have chosen something else based on what I know now. Uh, there wasn't a specific project that led me towards advertising. I think that what made me think that it was going to be good for me is because I've always enjoyed uh, fixing problems and organizing things. And I do think that when you started a company or you are in an ad agency and you have a new client, if you are like me, it's easy to identify what they're doing that they shouldn't be doing or what they're not doing that they should be doing. And I always found compelling finding ways to fix that or even changing the the way that the brand or the product or service is seen. But one of the things that I found more interesting, but I ended up learning about this in the end of my bachelor, was behavior economics. So even my final, okay, so I guess that will answer your question in a better way. This was not what led me into advertising, but that's something that I did that actually got me really in love with a part of advertising. My last project was about behavior economics. The thing that I chose was that. And I recommend, if you're interested in that, to read the book by Dana Riley that is called, oh, for God's sakes, it escaped me, but I can send to you guys later. Unpredictably, predictably unirrational or unpredictably irrational, one of those combinations. But it got me interested in how little do we know about how our brain works and how easily manipulated we are. So if you see this documentary that I talked to you guys about, that is on Netflix right now, The Social Dilemma, it talks a lot about how the industry, the tech industry, has been manipulating us. If you study a little bit about dark patterns, you will learn a little more about how sites will just, with little tweaks, get you to do things that you don't want or prevent you from doing things that you want. And behavior economics is just a broader area, but it focuses on the same thing. So it's how you know very much less than you think about how your brain works and how your decisions are made. And when you're working in advertising and in marketing and you're trying to convince people to do something or to see your brand as something, understanding this is important. But I guess that there wasn't a project that led me into advertising marketing, but learning more about that was definitely something that pushed me into the industry.
Awesome. Thank you. Question here. Let me pull it up. What do you think is the future of marketing and advertising? It was TV and print, now it's social media. What would be next? And how do you think about this in terms of skills we should need in the future?
Yeah, so things are changing exponentially. To make a prediction would be to be wrong, but I can tell you some directions where I think this is going. So uh, TV was important back then and still is now, but it's a bit less. And print was important back then. And social became important because of the same reason. It's where your attention is. So we're living in an attention economy. What we buy as media planners is your attention, the user attention. What companies like Facebook or CBS or NBC, what they sell is your eyeballs, is your attention. So I think that your question can be answered if you think about where the attention is going to be. Because unless we replace the current model of advertising, what's going to motivate, what's going to shift advertising is going to be attention. So the industry is going to be where the attention is. If people start shifting to TikTok, you can say it's still social, but that's where the money is going to go because that's where attention is. If we start going into VR, which was a big buzzword, but never became what it was promised to be, or it might become, but it hasn't so far. If people start using VR sets everywhere, or the way Google wanted, the Google glasses, then that's where the money is going to go. So it's really hard to predict because we it just moves too fast and in an unpredictable way. But I guess that I would stay focused on where the attention is going, where the audiences are going, is where the money is going to go, and it's where the industry is going to go. The reason that the industry moved into digital was because more and more people started consuming what was in the digital landscape, like YouTube, for example, like Facebook, and so on and so forth. So I guess that's the only advice I have to give. Like, keep your eye on where people's attention is going to, but uh, how it connects to what you need to learn. Uh, I would say the sooner you figure out where attention is going to be and which companies are going to be able to sell that attention, turn that attention into profit, into a product that they can sell, uh, I would say learn how they will do that. I'll give you a concrete example. Uh, Amazon is in more households than pretty much everything else in America right now. And not all of they have is commercialized. So they have our attention, but they haven't turned that into a product like Facebook has, for example. So once they do, you want to be one of the first to learn how to buy that attention that they're selling. For example, they are now selling ads. So if you understand how to buy ads from Amazon, considering that they have a lot of our attention, you're going to be ahead of the curve. So the same way that when Facebook started getting a lot of people's eyeballs, if you were one of the first to become an expert on Facebook ads, you would be ahead of the curve. So follow where the attention is and learn how the companies that are getting the attention are selling that back to you, and try to be ahead of the curve. But keep an eye open, because sometimes the dynamics change. Netflix has a lot of attention. You can't buy an ad on Netflix. So that kind of kicked us in the legs. So the point is, unless the landscape shifts completely towards a Netflix model, and then you're going to find another way to reach that people's attention, just follow the path that I just laid out. And I think that you will be fine.
Awesome. Thanks, Vinny. If you don't mind, I think we can wrap up with one final
Sure.
question. And that's a little bit more of a technical question, which is what's the blueprint to master Google Ads? I just got my Google Ads certificate, and I think they're looking for some guidance on sort of completing that trek.
Yeah. Okay. So Google's tools are not very user friendly. Google Ads, DV360, DCM, the ad platforms, it's not the type of thing that you can just intuitively figure out how to master. And even if you go online and look for answers to basic questions, how do I set up campaign the way A? Or how do I deal with the problem B? You're going to have so many conflicting answers that it's going to be a challenge. So this is what I recommend. And that's not just for Google Ads. I recommend this for everything. And this is not something that I did from the start, probably due to insecurity, but I do believe that's the best approach. Start using it. There's no better advice here. Just set up a dollar account, or like use $100 for a campaign, both on Facebook and in Google. But going to the platform, create a real campaign, see how it evolves, how it is affected by the changes that you make in the keywords and the ad copy. So I guess that the main advice here is go into the platforms and just do it. And if you don't have access to some of the platforms, for example, you won't be able to have access to a DSP to buy media programmatically. Well, then the first chance you get to do it, let's say you started on an agency, tell someone, look, mate, give me access Let me see how they're setting up campaigns here, just so you get the logic of it. So again, the main advice here is get into those platforms and use them as often as you can in as many different ways that you can, because I can tell you a ton of certifications that you can get, but if you're not using the platforms on a daily basis, you're going to forget. You're going to forget. And it's a lot to memorize. So I don't know. I will forget. Maybe you won't. Maybe you have photographic memory, but I definitely forgot just by taking.
I think we lost Vinny, unfortunately. Um, unless he pops back in here. Don't think I see him. It's just unfortunate we had to lose him like that. But yeah, Vinny, if you're watching this in a minute or later, thank you so much. Really appreciated it. I think it definitely would make a lot of sense if you're interested in this to review those slides. I'll definitely post them up later to sort of see the trajectories and different ways to check that out. But everyone, thanks for joining, and thanks Vinny for presenting. And Vinny is back. So Vinny, I think we lost you for a second, but I was just thanking you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I lost you and you were sort of mid sentence. I'm not sure if you lost your train of thought there.
No. I was just to finish up. I know that I took way more time than I had. I just want to
Not
say
at
that
all. Not at all.
if you want a guide to Google tools, I would start with Google Ads, Google Analytics, and Google Tag Manager. Those three will connect, and they are all you need to set up, optimize, and report on a campaign, whether it's YouTube, GDN, or search. After that, you can go into programmatic, but because access to those tools are harder, I would go with the first three.
Awesome. Vinny, thank you so much.
My
That was
pleasure.
an incredibly useful presentation, and then also answering these individual questions. If is there any way that students could follow up with you if they have more sort of personal questions?
Yes, for sure. And yeah, you're going to share this. Can you share this presentation with
Yeah,
them?
if you're fine with that, I'd love to share these slides.
I'm totally fine, and I will add to the final slide how people can reach me.
Perfect.
And yes, and again, you can find me on LinkedIn. I won't say my full name, because if you try to catch it, it's going to be hard for you unless you're from Brazil or Portugal. But I'm going to write it down on the final slide so you can to make your lives easier. And if not through LinkedIn, you can always send me an email.
All right, Vinny, thanks so much. This has been incredibly helpful, and I'm looking forward
Thanks, mate. My
to
pleasure.
speaking with you later.
Anytime.
All right, you have a good one.
Bye bye, you too.
Bye.